All right, guys, I'm out at my Jonathan apple tree. As you can see though, a lot of the apples have already found their way on the ground, but these freshly fallen apples are great candidates for homemade apple cider vinegar. Obviously don't use them if they've gone totally bad or are rotten, but even the ones that have bruises and rough spots on them are great candidates for apple cider vinegar. All you gotta do is cut out those bad pieces and then use the rest of the apple in your ACV. Because these are on the farm, these apples are organic, and I recommend using organic apples simply because ACV is a fermentation process and chemicals and fermentation just don't mix. Like, so many of these are literally perfect. Like, this is just a freshly fallen apple. Obviously some are not. And see, even ones that have like little blemishes like this, like that'll be really easy to cut out. That won't be difficult. So now on to actually making your apple cider vinegar. One of the reasons I love making apple cider vinegar is because it's really easy. It doesn't require a lot of work. It doesn't require a lot of equipment or materials. Anyone can make it at home. A few of the benefits of making your own apple cider vinegar is, number one, it's a little bit more cost effective than if you buy it from the store. Number two, it's a little bit more customizable. So you get to choose what apples you want to use, what sugar you want to use, how exactly acidic you like your vinegar, things like that. And number three, I just don't trust the store-bought stuff, to be honest, anymore. What I'm gonna cover in this video is the ingredients that you're gonna need to make this, the supplies you will need to make it, how to prepare the apples, how to mix the solution, what the fermentation process looks like, and how to bottle up the final product and store it. You will find out that this whole process is really simple. You're gonna be asking yourself, why didn't YouTube this sooner? The ingredients and supplies you're gonna need to make apple cider vinegar are apples or apple scraps. Remember, you don't have to use like whole nice apples. You can just use scraps if you want. Sugar, non-bleached. I also recommend organic because it's a fermentation process and chemicals and fermentation don't really like each other. Jars. You can use quart-sized jars, you can use pint-sized jars. I'm using 2 half-gallon sized jars just because I find it easy. If you do have a gallon-sized jar, that works really well too. Water. You will need that to pour over your apples. Don't let it be tap water. Why? Because tap water is terrible for you. Well, we already knew that. Make sure you're not using tap water. If you are using tap water, you're gonna have to boil it to get rid of some of the junk and then let it sit, come back to room temperature. Ultimately, it just has to be filtered. You can't use tap water because of all the things it has in it, so. But I'm guessing if you're here to learn how to make apple cider vinegar, you probably already know we don't drink tap water. Filtered water, please and thank you. And then lastly, something to seal off your mixture but still allow it to breathe. So it could be as simple as a coffee filter that you rubber band around the top of your jar. I also like using these pickle pipes or these like fermentation lids. Basically it looks like a nipple, but it allows the CO2 to release with that slit in the very top. And then you can also buy these little bands and just put it on top of the jar like that, screw them in. I use these all the time for anything I'm fermenting. Sauerkraut, apple cider vinegar, salsa, whatever. These are really handy. I will link these in the description below. So a lot of these apples I picked up off the ground, they literally just have like a few spots where I'm like, yeah, not you, and definitely not you. And that's not beautiful. You're beautiful, but that's not beautiful. So like big chunks, smaller chunks, don't matter. That's for you. I did that on purpose. This Jonathan apple tree we have is like magical. I swear to goodness. And yes, you can put the core of apples in there as well. They will be fine. We're gonna fill these jars up about 3/4. You don't want it being all the way full, and you really don't want half either. There's like a good sweet spot in between that I always aim for. Now that we got our jar 3/4 full of apple scraps, we're gonna add the water and sugar. How I like to do this is I approximate a tablespoon of sugar per cup of water. Now, this is not an exact science. I have seen a range of different ratios of sugar to water for this recipe, like a big range. The 1 tablespoon of sugar per 1 cup of water has worked for me, so that's what I usually stick to. 1 tablespoon of sugar and filtered water. So now that you have that all done, now you just need to cover your mixture. I'm gonna use my pickle pipe first. Place that on top, then the ring. The warmer the area you place this in, the faster the fermentation process is gonna go. I like to keep it in just a kitchen cupboard because I stir it every 1 to 2 days and just prod in there. So it's nice and accessible if I keep it here in the kitchen. And I'll do that for about 30 days. That's kind of the baseline area, a little less, a little more, depending on how quickly things are fermenting based off of a few different factors like the temperature, the type of apples, etc. The first 3 to 4 weeks after you've tucked them away in a cupboard somewhere is called the primary fermentation. And what's happening with the primary fermentation process is the natural yeasts that occur on the skins of the apples will start metabolizing the sugar that's in your water mixture, creating a byproduct, aka CO2. So if you see bubbles forming in your mixture, you're doing it, you're fermenting. The ideal temperature for yeast to do that thing is somewhere between 60 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And your mixture has to breathe. Obviously it's burping. CO2 is being released, so it's gotta breathe. And that's why you can't use like a normal lid. You have to use a coffee filter or some type of fermentation lid. Like I mentioned, these are the ugly stepchildren of the apples that fell off my tree, so they have a lot of boo-boos on them. But really any apple scraps you can use to make this. If you're making apple pie, you're making some kind of canned apple product, you're gonna have scraps. So why not make apple cider vinegar? You'll know when the primary fermentation is coming to an end because there'll be less and less bubbles and a lot of the apple pieces will start to sink. You don't need anything fancy to ferment. Anyone can do it. Just put that baby on like that. Make sure they're sealed off. You don't want any bugs or any dirt or dust getting in there. So easy as that. Tuck them away somewhere warm and dark. Stir them every 1 to 2 days, and then we'll check back in 30 days. So we're on day 20. As you can see, apples are still floating. I'm just gonna come in here and stir. I've been stirring every 1 to 2 days just to replace the apples that float to the surface. They're nice and bubbly up top. It's definitely getting that like vinegary smell happening at this point. All right, it is day 35. We've been stirring our apple cider vinegar every 1 to 2 days, just mix up the apples that have come to the surface. As you can see, she is ready to be strained. A lot of the apple pieces are starting to sink. Bubble activity has significantly slowed down, and it's forming that really nice color that we like to see with apple cider vinegar. So we are ready to strain it and start the second stage of fermentation. I would like to add the caveat that not everyone does the second stage of fermentation. Some people will strain it just after this and go right to drinking it. I like that strong vinegar taste, so I personally like fermenting the second time. But if your apple cider vinegar is at the pH and the taste level that you like, feel free to strain it and start using it right away just as is. What we're gonna do is take a strainer and some cheesecloth and strain out our vinegar. I'm gonna take my little masher tamper thingy that I use for sauerkraut and just kind of push those apple pieces, squash them, try to extract as much of that vinegar as we can. Something you can do at home if it's your first time making apple cider vinegar is buy pH strips or a pH meter just to check the acidity of your vinegar. You're gonna want it somewhere between 3 and 4.5, ideally at least under 4.5. A great thing to do with the leftover apple pieces is add them to a compost pile if you have one, or if you have any livestock, chickens, etc., they will love these. I'll try to squeeze the last of it out. Okay, after you're done straining, just pour it back into the jar. You can pour it into clean jars if you want, but I'm just pouring it into the jars that I made the original mixture in. So just tuck this away for 2 to 3 weeks, let it ferment just a little bit more, and then when it's done, bottle it in a dark glass bottle with a non-metal lid because the acidity of this is kind of gonna corrode that, so don't do that. Use a plastic lid. And then use it for whatever you want to use apple cider vinegar for. Add it to soups, put it in your water. There's endless possibilities when it comes to apple cider vinegar. And this stuff isn't gonna last long because it is delicious. You will find out if you make it yourself. I'm excited for you guys to try this just because, in my opinion, this stuff is so much better than the store-bought stuff. Like after you make your own and you see how easy it is and how good it tastes, you're never gonna wanna buy apple cider vinegar from the store again. I know fermenting can be kind of scary. I know I was a little scared of it at first. A book that really helped me just navigate it, and I still reference it all the time, is a book called The Art of Fermentation. It's basically like the Bible of anything fermentation. Kefir, sauerkraut, mead, sourdough bread, everything. It just explains fermentation and all the different fermented foods from across the world and how to make them. Like I said, I reference it all the time, and I will make sure to link that in the description below. And that's it. If you have any comments or questions about the apple cider vinegar process, please leave your comments down below. I will do my best to get to them. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell notification if you would like notified when I come out with new videos. And thanks for watching.